Thanks for joining. I know I mentioned this yesterday, but it's so funny because like I just did a vertical live where I was meditating that had like 3,000 views. It just I don't know, it just shows like more so how algorithms are like, and there'll be maybe 4 views probably for this while it's live. If that. It's just interesting to see. I mean, they're just pushing vertical lives, but the rules of things are so I don't know. I see a lot of people talking about algorithms like they're extremely smart and scary. And there's a lot of other factors at play there. Hi, Sam. Um, so yeah, I wanted to talk today about Vipassana meditation specifically and what it's helped me come to understand about the economic system and how that relates to seeds. And the express reason that I'm going live more now is because we have a course coming up with doors closing on the 22nd of May, which is in less than 2 weeks. And I've been really excited and encouraged recently on this YouTube channel to see that it's been a struggle for the past few years, really, to figure out how to share about what Seeds is doing. Seeds is about transcending the old economic system. It's about helping us get out of the trap of, having to trade our time for money and being left in scarcity and feeling like we always have to be quote unquote productive, even though people actually aren't productive within the structure of the old system. It's a myth. There are all of these myths associated with late stage capitalism. And we're indoctrinated into that from the time we're small children if we grow up in countries that are capitalist. It's a different thing in communist countries, but I would argue that the same sort of toxic masculine, wounded masculine energies create a lot of this dysfunction. And Seeds is about transcending all of that. But because Seeds uses blockchain tools, cryptocurrency tools, because of the negative narrative in the mainstream in cryptocurrency in the last couple of years, it's been very difficult to get anyone who would resonate with the idea of transcending late stage capitalism, with meditation, with helping others and being able to build abundance through helping others, which is what Seeds offers. If you mention the word cryptocurrency in association with those things, people just like immediately don't want to listen anymore because there's such a negative connotation associated with cryptocurrency. And so I've been really encouraged in the last really just over a month. Well, I did a Vipassana course, a 10-day Vipassana self course on YouTube. I filmed myself and then made a long form video about it. Like I was doing lives as I was completing the course, vertical lives where I was meditating, and I've kept that up and I'd done that before the course as well. And I feel that I've come to understand something essential, which is that that's the way to share about what Seeds is. If we're communicating about it through the lens of Vipassana and how like Vipassana has helped me to understand specifics about why the old economic system isn't working, which we've then brought into Seeds. And if we're connecting with people who resonate with something like meditation and specifically Vipassana, that's going to be the way I think to help Seeds scale at the large level that I've always believed that it would whenever the energies had shifted enough to allow that to happen. And it really does, like just in the last few days too, it's kind of interesting to me anyway, that it feels like a little bit of a shift is starting to happen in terms of how I can communicate about this and in terms of the way it's being received. So specifically today, I thought I'd talk about that. I've never spoken about that specifically, I don't think ever before that I can recall in a public sense. Like I really had to kind of gather my thoughts and organize them a bit to get clear on what I think about this because I haven't had to articulate that before. So yeah, that's what I want to share. Sam says, what kind of is this of meditation Vipassana? Is that for cancer? Vipassana meditation is the specific meditative practice that the texts say the Buddha used, and anyone who gets out of suffering uses to get to that goal, to transcend the experience of what's a bummer about being a human or any being on the planes here. So yeah, if you're it's not like I'm not Buddhist. I'm not any religion. I'm not religious. I've just done Vipassana. I did my first course 12 years ago. And it's just improved my life in a real, everyday, practical sense so much that I have to keep practicing. I just will because it's just benefited me so much, and it benefits you. Intellectual understanding helps, but it's really an experiential thing. So yeah, I think without a doubt, it's the most wonderful thing that I've ever found. And I think it's the most wonderful thing any person can find. And I found that the economic system, as it's currently designed, is kind of set up sort of exactly in the opposite way to the type of system that would align with something like Vipassana. And by that, what I mean is, well, to start, I'll say that, okay, as I mentioned, I did my first Vipassana course 12 years ago. So I was 28 when it started. I turned 29 while I was there. Before that, I had been a professional stock trader on Wall Street and in Chicago, as some of y'all already know. And even back then, I started trading professionally when I was 24. It was in April of 2008. I just turned 24. The markets were crashing, as you might recall. We were going into the Great Recession. And so it was kind of a crazy time to learn to trade. But I figured out ways to be profitable through buying gold ETFs, gold stocks. And even back at that time, I started to become aware that the system, like, I came up thinking like, okay, I'm gonna work hard in school. I was valedictorian of my high school class. I'm gonna go to a good college. I managed to go to what's considered to be a good college. I did all of the things that they say you're supposed to do, right? And then after I graduated, I got what looked to be a good job. But then I started to realize that there was all of this stuff that I'd never been told about while doing all the things that they say you're supposed to do. One thing was that even though I had a better educational background, better grades, I went to a better college, by that point I already had experience as a profitable trader. I was still paid less than all of the men who started at the same time that I did at one particular trading job. And it was just like a textbook case of wage discrimination, almost to the letter, because I think I was paid 15% less, which is like statistically how much less women are typically paid. And I started to realize, like, oh, this system actually isn't set up, this idea of the quote unquote American dream. It's actually, there's a lot about it that I was told that is not true. And then I also came to realize that the system itself was stupid. It was very inefficiently designed. When I was trading, there's this manufactured sense of scarcity, this zero sum setup in which, as I've said a bunch of times before, if you've heard me talk about this, if I made $1, it meant that somebody else had to lose that dollar. That makes sense. That type of systemic design makes sense if there actually is scarcity, but money is not scarce. It's all over. Governments are printing it constantly. It's everywhere. It just flows in weird ways because of the design of the old system. So I was kind of like getting wise to some of that when I was working as a trader in like my mid 20s. And then once I started practicing Vipassana a few years later, more opened up. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. Probably the biggest factor I see whenever somebody says that they're interested in going to a Vipassana course, there are these 10-day free courses that you can go to at centers all around the world. And when I've met people who are interested, a lot of times what they'll say is that they can't go because they can't spare 10 days. They can't get off of work for that long. And so that brings me to one of the flaws in the old system that Seeds addresses, which is just this idea that, we have to trade our time for money in order to survive in most cases within the old economic system. Unless we're already rich, unless we already have a lot of capital that we can then invest so that it generates more capital. This, in my view, may be the biggest flaw in capitalism, is that it takes money to make money. I mean, if you're very wealthy and you can just invest and farm it out and have somebody do it for you, whatever, then you can just live off of those funds and do whatever you want. And that's one thing. And okay, good for that person. But for the vast majority of us, of course, we can't do that. We struggle, we try to save, we try to get education, we try to get those jobs, often at rich corporations. And then we're in this situation, which even if it's close to the ideal within that system, say we get a really good paying fancy job with an hour with a good annual salary at a fancy corporation that makes a lot of money. In that instance, we're still trading our time in order to get that money, right? There's an expectation that we're going to be working 40-ish hours a week, whatever it is, even though studies show that when people are working 40 hours a week, they're actually working less than 12 hours a week productively. So, like, all of it is so dumb. And we know that it doesn't really work. We know that a lot of people are questioning it, especially since the pandemic. And I think the thing is that people don't know that there are other options. And that's another thing that Seeds is offering. Sam says, I want to go. Bye, Rachel. Okay, bye, Sam. Uh, Paul says, word Vipassana is Sanskrit. Yeah. I wonder if it's um, one of those instances where like the Pali word is the same as the Sanskrit word, because I don't think Sanskrit existed at the same time Pali did, right? You would know better than I do, I think, Paul. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Pali predated Sanskrit. It's um, like Latin or something. It's a dead language, but there are languages that are spoken now that are very similar to it. Um, Sam, you're funny. Paul says, love the idea, Rachel. Thank you. Yeah, so I think at this stage of the game, and I want to make sure that I don't sound like too dogmatic or religious again. Like I don't consider myself to be religious at all. I just do this thing and it's benefited my life. And part of it is with Vipassana that like the foundation is this uh, Shila morality. So you're not like stealing or lying or hurting other people or hurting other living beings. So that there is like this morality in the way that there is a presence of that in other religions too, but it's not a religion. I just worry that this sounds dogmatic because I specifically mentioned Vipassana, but I do that because in my experience, it's benefited me so much. And I think it's key to a lot of the shifts that are going to be happening now. And it's something that's also interesting, I think, is that apparently in the text, there was this idea that it wouldn't spread for like 2,500 years after the time of the Buddha, but then it would start to spread again. And apparently, that year, the 2,500th year, was in like 1955, the year that Goenka, this prolific Vipassana teacher to lay people, first learned how to practice it. So there's this idea that like Goenka's teacher used to talk about how the gong of Vipassana has struck, so it's going to start to spread. And that's totally happened because Goenka managed to create, he's like the main engine behind this. He died 12 years ago, but before he died, he managed to scale, more than 200 centers around the world. So that somebody like me who lives across the world was able to go to a center that was pretty close to where I lived. And I'm very, very grateful for that. And in connection with that, I think that that means all of the systems that are in the way of that, I mean, they're going to fall. And I think the economic system, because of these fundamental flaws, is going to be among those. And again, I don't want to sound dogmatic. I don't want to sound like whatever. I just feel this. I can sense it. And there are other things like astrology and other sort of spiritual beliefs that align with this, relating to like the rise of feminine energy and so forth and ascension. It just all seems to be lining up. And so I wanted to explain how Seeds is a part of this, sort of more explicitly in relation to Vipassana. So, with the idea of having to trade your time for money, which keeps so many of us locked within that system, right? The old system. Because when you have a job like that and you're working at a corporation, maybe you don't love it, but maybe you like your coworkers, whatever, and then you get used to a certain standard of living. And if you came from, a poor background where you didn't have a comfortable situation, then that can really seem like something you want to hold on to, of course, right? That makes sense. I mean, if we want our basic physical needs to be taken care of, certainly, But then the thing is that once we have that in place, that's when we often start realizing that we need to address our psychological and spiritual and emotional needs as well. You know what I'm saying? Once we're out of that kind of crisis situation. So seeds is set up such that we can address the problem of it taking money to make money to a great extent, because you can redeem a single seed. And currently, I think I haven't checked the prices today, but I think they're around 1 cent or so on the markets, US dollars, maybe a little less even. You can redeem a seed to ask for any amount of money that you need in US dollars. So you could redeem a seed to ask for the $5,000 you need to cover your living expenses for whatever amount of time, 4 months, say, something like that, so that you can focus on writing a book. Say you want to do that. The idea there is helping us to get away from this idea of a year of your time is worth X amount of money, or an hour of your time is worth X amount of money. There's something about being able to say, this unit of currency, this seed is worth this amount of money when you're making your request for help. And then people, of course, have to provide it. Givers in the community can then make gifts toward your need, and they'll receive seeds, cryptocurrency, and things as well. So it's not a perfect solution because it's still necessary for you to have a seed, but I think that there's a benefit to that as well, because it provides the structure that is helpful. We need some sort of structure that we can rely on. And if it truly is too expensive for you to, have a penny to get a seed, there are other ways. You can use our community fund instead to make a request for help, to get a seed to do that. If that's what you want to do, that's okay too. We want to make sure it's never prohibitive for anybody, even if, regardless of your situation, it should be accessible to you. The other thing about the old system that I think doesn't align with what's up with Vipassana for sure is that, like, as you start developing a Vipassana, a lot of things happen. One big thing I've talked about that happened for me is that it took time, it took many years, but eventually my craving for alcohol totally went away. And I had a binge drinking problem for a long time. So that just seems crazy. I mean, if I hadn't experienced it, I don't know that I would believe it. You know what I mean? I've been totally sober now for almost 7 years, and it's effortless. I don't even think about craving alcohol ever at all. It's amazing. But as I said, that took time. Um, One thing you start to notice more immediately if you're practicing Vipassana, and maybe folks that watch this video in the future have had experience with this too, is that you start to feel more gratitude and more of a sense of wanting to give. And as we know in the old system, it's literally driven by these ideas of fear and greed, which was especially obvious when I was a Wall Street stock trader. That it's this whole idea that, like, the market goes down because of fear and then it goes up because of greed. So the old system that we were operating within and are still operating within, those are the driving factors. And those obviously aren't high vibratory spiritual energies. They're not about giving or abundance. And because there's no space for that within the old economic system, that's why we have to have nonprofits, because the for-profit system leaves no space for that. And those ideas, as I've said in other videos, date back to Adam Smith 250 years ago, writing The Wealth of Nations. And we've really outgrown, I think for some time now, this sense that we should be locked into a system that is defined by that, defined by the idea that everything everybody does is exclusively out of self-interest, because we know that's not true. There are a lot of people that love to give, and I see that in women especially. And Adam Smith, I've shared this before too, but something funny there is that, funny and tragic, is that Adam Smith, he has this famous quote about the butcher, the baker, and the brewer not providing your dinner. Out of kindness, but because they have their own self-interest, because they want to get paid. But at that same time, Adam Smith, for most of his adult life until her death, he lived with his mom. He lived with his mother. So his mother was providing his dinner. She probably wasn't charging him for it. So even though he was experiencing that and saw this like feminine contribution from a woman who we can assume loved him, she probably wasn't feeding her child exclusively out of her own self-interest. He was too dense and obtuse to recognize the value of that and to then include it in this economic system that he is largely credited with designing, which still governs. It's like it's everywhere today, right? Like it's everything about the way we live, no matter where we are in the world. At this part, at this stage in the game, we need money to get basic things. We can barter to some extent, maybe, but money is needed. Money is just a tool. Money is not evil. But in order to get that money, that capital, we either need money to make more money off of it to invest, or we need to trade our time for money in most cases. We can receive gifts too. But again, that actually takes place outside of the economic system because it doesn't have space for charity. Paul says, so lovely to hear you speak such clarity in the way to debunk our flawed system. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks. These lives feel more uncertain too, because I am speaking more extemporaneously. So I really appreciate that. Yeah. And so Seeds works not only to incorporate that idea of giving in the system, but from the ground up, giving is at the very center of what Seeds is working to do. Instead of compartmentalizing giving and building abundance yourself through Seeds, when you help others, you can receive Seeds cryptocurrency in thanks. And by virtue of that, if and when they go up in value, you can actually build greater wealth because you were kind. And that sort of incentive structure is going to attract and reward, very different energies. And I think, like in the States, at least where I live, especially since Trump came into power again, we're seeing, I think, more discussion and complaints about the problem of oligarchs, these multi-billionaires. Elon Musk is the most visible, probably, who are overstepping boundaries, who are doing things that aren't great, and they have so much money because they've led corporations and so forth. And I mean, we can break that down more in that if we're looking at Musk specifically, his background is in tech, and I'm in the world of tech. Seeds is a tech organization. The reason that tech organizations get funding typically is because they raise it from venture capitalists. So that's where Musk got his initial funding. And that industry, as I've complained about many times, is so deeply discriminatory and misogynistic that it's almost comical. Like it just needs to die. It's nobody Very few people in that sector are good at their jobs. I would say that there are maybe 50 good VC in the world who are actually able to invest profitably, and then everybody else is chasing those deals. And even though female founded organizations statistically are more successful, make more money, like it's ridiculous, dude. They get less than 2% um, of the dollars that venture capital funds put out. Instead, it's going to companies founded by people like Elon Musk. And I'm not saying that he's never created any value ever. Maybe he has. I mean, he didn't found Tesla, he took it over. But we're seeing, I think, a lot of demonstrations of how much there was a mythology surrounding that. This idea that he's smart and he's good at stuff has been revealed to be not true, largely. He's not, doesn't seem to be doing a very good job at anything. And he's also demonstrating fascism, which is terrifying. In a system like Seeds, in which it's the giving people who are the ones who can build wealth because they were kind, it's not going to create oligarchs who are intent on making money through taking, who are in the habit of making money through taking. I think in a better system, if the design is of a higher order, then everybody within that system behaves in a better way. And relating to that, I would say that the problems that Seeds has seen so far, the challenges that we've had, yeah, I mean, almost without exception. I mean, I've certainly made mistakes as the founder of Seeds. There are things that I need to improve myself, and certainly things that need to be improved within the ecosystem. But I think the thing that has gone wrong, challenges, I guess is a better word to use, has been when we've run into people that take. And they've almost always been men of that toxic masculine energy again. But it's in everybody, it's in people of all genders. And that has meant that Seeds has had to get a little bit better about making sure that that's not in place. Like, for example, back in the day, we used to say that you could just get gifts through Seeds forever, and you can, but we eventually realized that there needed to be something of a boundary there, and we borrowed this from Vipassana courses as well, from Goenka's structure, which I think is really smart, which is that at a Vipassana course, if you've already sat 2 free courses, they ask that you volunteer to serve a course before you sit another one. And in that way, they can continue running this organization, like with the service of volunteers. And it really helps the energy to be a lot more pure and supportive. And so at Seeds, our version of that had been because of this change, because I had a Sankara, this, and I still have it. I'm trying to clear it. This thing of giving too much, of also having blind spots about aligning with people who didn't care very much about me or what I was doing, and then being taken advantage of in different ways or attacked sometimes. And I know that comes from my family of origin. I think that comes from past lives as well. I've been working on it a lot, and I know eventually, sooner or later, if I just keep meditating, eventually it'll clear sooner or later. And because I had that flaw in me, it extended into the organization that I founded, which is something I think about a lot in terms of like founders. I mean, if we look at Facebook, for example, and everything that's wrong with Facebook, I think it points back to flaws in Zuckerberg, issues that he has never healed for himself that have then negatively impacted a lot of people. And so I do want to try and, do my best to be really responsible and aware of what I'm putting out that then can have similar effects. Not similar in the sense that I don't think I'm behaving like Zuckerberg. I don't think the things that I need to heal are the same things that he needs to heal. In some ways, it's the opposite problem. I think I was, yeah, just giving too much. So we set this boundary eventually through Seeds where it was like, instead of just being able to receive gifts forever, after you've received 2 gifts from Seeds, we ask that you either give forward a third of what you've received in monetary value to other people in need if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, you can try and raise funds for them instead, or you can just sit a Vipassana course. So this way of scaling Vipassana is baked into the Seeds model. And the reason for that is because not only like it makes you feel so much better, it also makes, I mean, Vipassana literally means, as I understand, Paul would know better than I do, um, to see things as they really are is one translation of what Vipassana means, as I understand, to see things as they really are, to see all sides of a thing. So you get more clarity. So then the stuff that you're doing that maybe you're not aware of, or maybe you kind of are, that is making life more difficult for people around you, making life more difficult for you, you start to release it. And so as more folks who are, letting their loads go, like coming out of trauma, are in the Seeds community, it's going to be a happier, more harmonious, more efficient. It's just going to be better in every way, because that's what happens when you're purifying your mind, which is what happens through Vipassana. So, yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. I wanted this to be pretty short, but the other piece of that I'll leave you with is that this idea of abundance, of monetary abundance within the old system, it's not often, I see a lot of artists, spiritual people, women especially, who struggle with they've taken in associations in which it seems like having a lot of money feels negative. And I think that's because in the old system, it often is associated with not high bar levels of behavior. It's not associated with high energies, of things like loving kindness. If you're very rich, there's often a lot of negativity associated with that in terms of how you got that way. How did you get that rich? And so I see a lot of people kind of resisting that. And then in the old system, because of the way it's designed, that keeps a lot of people, artists, creative people, in this scarcity energy, because fear and scarcity are kind of, those are some of the only options within the old system. Not to be too reductive, but I think you understand what I mean. It is possible to do good things within the design of the old system and to be helpful to other people, but it's not designed to do that per se. Um, it's designed to work as a free market. And often free markets are not humanitarian, are not doing what's actually best for human beings. So, Seeds is about allowing us to build abundance together through the ecosystem. It's I can't say it's guaranteed because it depends on the people. It depends on people giving. It depends on people believing in the idea and the practical application of seeds and therefore buying more seeds on the decentralized market. It depends on people adding to the seeds mutual aid pool on decentralized platforms like Uniswap as well. But as more and more giving people are doing that, the entire pie grows. And because you can then, in fact, you can't, it's not that you just can, you do receive seeds when you help others. If those go up in market value, then that creates a bigger pie for the givers. And then you can receive help as well. So I've been thinking recently about like, I think I should more explicitly talk about like why seeds hasn't blown up yet. We did have, I mean, during the last cryptocurrency market cycle, 2021-ish, that's the best period in terms of like the seeds market value that we've seen so far. Seeds went up to about 20 cents in value per seed at that time. But it's this tricky sort of thing because we still exist, like that system is so much about greed and whatever, right? Excuse me. And so even though I think seeds attracted better qualities in people, it was still coming through that framework. And so then when there were negative associations with cryptocurrency and whatever, we didn't it didn't sustain in the way that it would and will when we're connecting with people who are all about this idea of giving and building abundance through giving, who really believe in the mission and aren't just here to make shorter term profits. And I'm not demonizing that. I understand that people have to do that sometimes or they want to do that. Whatever, it's your money. You can do what you want with your money. But there was too much of that energy within the seeds community. And I think, like Paul knows, I got robbed last year and he was nice enough to help me out when I asked for help through seeds. I think another lesson I was meant to learn through getting robbed then was just about how intentional and careful I have to be as the founder of Seeds to try and make sure we're connecting with people who are here because they're like, yeah, I dig it. I like this mission. I know we need to get out of the old economic system. And they're therefore supporting Seeds for those reasons. And they want to do it longer term so that we can get out of this, so that we can get out of the trap of the old system. And so with that, I'll segue into talking about our course. I don't want this to like cheapen the larger ideals, the bigger vision that I just shared. Because I almost feel like at this stage of the game, this wasn't true when I started teaching this course, but now it's kind of like everybody has a course kind of thing. This course is effectively free when you sign up because you receive Seeds cryptocurrency with it. And it leverages my experience as a previous like career profitable stock trader in Chicago and on Wall Street, who then started buying Bitcoin at $90 a coin in 2013. I teach this course expressly because it sustains seeds until we reach a point, until the ecosystem reaches a point at which the market itself can sustain seeds on its own. And we're not there yet. So I do this and it's fun. If you're interested in cryptocurrency generally, this can be beneficial to you. But I really want to stress, because in the past I haven't stressed this, and we've then sometimes had people join the course who were just about making money. That's cool. Again, I'm not demonizing that. You know, do whatever you feel called to do. But this is really meant for good giving people who are interested in alternate decentralized models who want to support seeds because the course supports seeds, as I said. And we talk about seeds in the course, but it's not the focus. It's a more generalized trading and cryptocurrency. Um, we cover a variety of topics within the world of cryptocurrency, and we really talk about trading, like how to actually trade it profitably. But this is meant for folks that are like, yeah, I want us to get out of the old system. I resonate with meditation. I resonate with the idea of giving and building abundance through giving and being supporting one another. This course is then for you. As I mentioned, the doors will close in less than 2 weeks, May 22nd, which is it's 2 weeks from yesterday, so it's a Thursday. And if it appeals to you, I hope that you'll join. We would love to have you if that resonates. I'll put the link in the chat here just in case there's anybody lurking who maybe hasn't seen it. And then Paul's like, yes, none of the models are rewarding to giving. Yeah, right. Manifesting many, many giving people join our community and grow together. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I've been trying to more consciously think about manifesting that as well. Um, and I think we will. I really do believe we will. When I mentioned at the beginning that it felt like some sort of inflection point had kind of been hit, I think we've crossed a little bit of a threshold. And I feel myself changing a little bit, and I feel the way that I'm speaking about this changing in a way that I think will help with this, hopefully. And I'll keep trying. I'll keep doing whatever I can. Um, yeah. So, all right, I'll let y'all go. Thank you, Paul, for hanging out, and anyone else who's still hanging out as well. I appreciate you very much. And I hope you'll join the course if it resonates. And I'll be on here live again soon if you feel like joining any future conversations. I'm doing these pretty frequently heading into course close on the 22nd. Okay, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Take care. Bye. That was nice.